Welcome to SILS Connections. Thank you for joining us today. I'm your host, Lori Haight, and our guest today is Anita Jotwani, who'll be talking about moving forward, perspectives on navigating uncertainty, using your degree, and embracing change. If anyone has any questions, please feel free to use the chat box and I'll share those. Anita, I'll let you introduce yourself and then begin with our topic for today.
Awesome. Yeah. So, hi, I'm Anita Jotwani. I graduated from SILS with my bachelor's in science and information science in 2005. So 15 years ago, as of this year. So it's a monumental year. And I think if you asked my graduating self where you thought you would be in 15 years, I wouldn't say I would be in this seat today, giving a talk like this, or much less working at Walmart corporate. So if you think about the size, so from a perspective of, I've had a lot of, I would say, interesting, cool, challenging jobs that have taken me from finance and now to retail over the course of my career. Definitely have seen a lot of career challenges and personal challenges. So to navigating uncertainty from both perspectives, I think is something that unfortunately I've had a lot of practice with. But I think it would be, I'm currently at Walmart Corporate. I'm in product management for them. So I lead our global people analytics team, which is responsible for doing analytics and insights and machine learning and data science for our 2.3 million associates across the world. So if you think about size, we're the third largest private employer or third largest employer in the world behind the US and Chinese government. So there you go, fun fact for the day. I think we say that everyone lives within a mile of a Walmart quote unquote product, and a Walmart product actually is starting to change. So there's new meaning behind what is a Walmart product as we've delved into more of the digital space. So that's a brief intro about me. And then the only other thing I will say is that no question is off limits with me. So that there's permission to ask whatever you have on mind. All right. With that, I will actually share my screen. I didn't necessarily do a really lengthy deck or anything like that. I know we all have are spending more time on different versions of video calls lately, but I wanted to, there we go. We'll do something a little bit interactive first. So this is, I don't know if anybody's used this before, but Menti is pretty straightforward. So you go to menti.com, you can do this on your phone and enter in, how are you feeling today? And what I failed to mention is I am a certified coach. So this is actually my favorite question to ask at the start of every meeting. And I'll actually even do it myself. Ooh, excited. It's a good one. Antsy, sleepy. Oh, I can go with sleepy too. Burnt out from work. Oh, worried. Okay. Love working at home. Okay, that I'm with that too. Interested, busy. All right. I think we probably got most of the people that are on this call. So I think it's so I think there's one thing that, if anything I talk about, it's really recognizing where you're at. Recognizing where you're at right now is really important because it influences every decision you'll make for the next 10 minutes and potentially even the next hours. So just being aware of what your thoughts and how you're feeling, and take that into context, take that into how you're thinking about the rest of your day. So this is really helpful to me because I'm going to keep this in mind of where we all collectively are sitting at through the rest of this this presentation. Oh, there's another one. So we got, oh, bored. Oh, we don't want to be bored. There's probably a lot of things that we can do there to make you unbored. All right. So talking about like navigating uncertainty. So the quality of your life is in direct proportion to the amount of uncertainty you can comfortably deal with. So the quality of your life is in direct proportion to the amount of uncertainty you can comfortably deal with. So it's a Tony Robbins quote. You know, I watch him from time to time, and I think this is really powerful because, you know, uncertainty, we often think of it as a bad thing, but you know, you really need to channel your abilities to figure out how to reframe it for yourself. Because if you don't have too much uncertainty and you have a very predictable schedule or you have a very predictable path, you're probably missing out on opportunity. You're probably not looking in your peripheral vision of all the opportunities that may be passing you by. And an opportunity could be a really small thing. It could be a connection with another individual. It can be an opportunity to even speak at one of these events. It can be, you know, a dozen other things just to connect with somebody. But you can also be on the other end of the spectrum. You can be facing inordinate amounts of uncertainty, and you need to figure out how to dial that back and come back to a place where you can actually operate from. So being able to navigate the spectrum of uncertainty is really, really important. And finding what that right proportion for you is what we're gonna try to delve into and try to talk a little bit about next. All right, so navigating uncertainty and find your P's. It's a play on word for peace. So I like acronyms, and I think this is somewhat of a little bit of a funny one. You know, not everyone's favorite is peas, but it is finding your peace, but doing that through the tools that you already have within yourself. So the first P for the P's is pause, and I think this is really, really important to say that it's absolutely okay not to be motivated or to be proactive. We don't have to be motivated or proactive at every given moment. So if you are in crisis, you know, it's really, really important to press pause and take in everything. And I know it's counterintuitive because when I've lost a job previously, or when I've reorged and had to move to a different role, or something personally happened to me that was really challenging, there was this need of saying, oh, I have to go and get a job immediately, or I have to go and do something immediately. But what I found was I actually needed to pause. I needed to, let myself take it in, mourn, complain, do every other emotion in between, because by acknowledging it, I was way more motivated and actually taking action and doing something about it when I was ready, when I was mentally ready to jump back in. And there's not like a right time. So I think the popular question I get asked here is, well, how long is this pause? It's really up to you. It's up to you. It's up to what you need, and depending on the situation. So I'm saying if you're still in this stage today, then, continue to wait, continue to binge your favorite show, because that's a completely acceptable activity when you're in the pause phase. Allow yourself the time to process before you attempt to carry on. And I think there's like some fundamental things that happen when we're in this pause phase. We start comparing ourselves. We start talking about, oh, my other colleague that, lost their job, they already found something. So stop. Do not compare yourself to others. We all have different circumstances. We have different needs. We have different timelines. This is why we're individuals. And then once you do feel ready to move on, that's when we actually move on to the next letter. But I'll pause here, literally and figuratively, if there's any questions so far.
Anita, the only thing on our chat so far is that someone said visualize world peace. And so that's a good, I think in the chaos, I think that's funny to think about.
That is funny. Oh my gosh, that's a great comment. I'll have to keep that in mind if I talk about this topic again. Yeah, so I think that's great. So, okay, so E. Let me see, it's gonna let me do this. E. explore. So once you've kind of gotten over, your 7 phases of denial, your mourning period, whatever that looks like for you, is starting to explore. And there's zigzag lines. Exploration is not a clear path. You may start off with the exploration and say, you know what, I think I'm going to apply for this job because I've always dreamt to be X. Or I'm going to go do this because I have expertise in this space. I would encourage you to also kind of look at things that are related. And there's resources that can definitely help you do this if it's for job hunting. And we can definitely talk about that if that's something that's of interest to others in the questions and answers. But really exploring and kind of evaluating what you want to do. What does your ideal job look like? And if it's for job hunting, you can start with job descriptions for things that you like or you're ambitiously wanting to hold someday. Really print them out, keep them in a PDF, create a Wordle, which is like those word cloud generators. Use one of those to put like the job descriptions in there and see what words jump out at you. And then take that information and kind of say, well, how can I do that? Like, these are keywords that are really, really valuable in these jobs. How can I apply those? And how does like my degree, my experience help me actually tap into that and actually make that the showcase talent that I can give other people? Another job one, it's like, like looking at your resume and kind of saying, well, what are other areas and other industries that, need these problem solvings and critical thinking skills? And really exploring those through information interviews, talking to friends. You will actually most likely find that like looking for your next gig or your first opportunity, it's not going to necessarily always come from the place you expect. And that's okay. It may not be your final destination, but this is why it's a zigzag line while you're exploring. And then after you've explored, it is really, really important to set actions. So in coaching, we often talk about, leaving every session with like a list of things that you're going to tackle before you meet with your coach the next time. I think this, taking that out of like that context and applying it here is saying that you should go off, explore a whole bunch of things. At some point, your exploration is going to diverge you. And then this will actually bring you back in. It'll bring you back into, okay, what are my first steps? Goal here is keep it really, really small. Make the steps as small as possible, really meaningful actions so that you can start stacking your wins. The more finite and well-defined the action is, it is easier to monitor and for you to see progress. And when you see progress is actually where you get to the point and you strive. You're actually setting yourself to be successful and increasing your motivation so that you can actually make it happen. So your actions, bite-size actions. So it's easy to check them off and say, yep, I've done that. I went and did the research, or I went and talked to the person that got me this first conversation. Whatever that is just making it very clear, digestible so that you can make it happen. So your P's: pause, explore, action, and strive. And really thinking about it in the context of yourself and where this applies. You can definitely do the same thing at work. If you're doing a new strategy, pause, assess the situation, explore, go and look at what the periphery, what on either side, develop your really meaningful, like few set steps of actions that would take you through the next week, maybe the next week and a half or so, and then really make it happen. I'll pause there and take any questions or immediate comments.
Anita, there's no questions in chat, but I was wondering if you could share what worked well for you of staying in a positive headspace during minding your P's or finding your peace.
Yeah, so I would say, so I've been in between jobs twice in my career where it was like literally between two different companies. And then as well as one other time actually living through the financial recession, actually while at work, but having survivor's guilt, I would, so to speak, because I saw my peers lose their jobs and I didn't necessarily lose mine. And that was a different piece of strain. keeping a gratitude journal. I know some people, like I actually balked at that idea very early on in my career of, why would, keeping track of things that I'm grateful for would really matter or make a difference. And I actually think it does make a difference. And you can just do it for 30 days. Like every day, write down what you're grateful for that, like at that day, whatever is top of mind. And it could be pizza. Like that's completely acceptable thing to have gratitude for in a moment of time, because it's where your mind is in that moment. But I think it's collectively getting into that mindset of saying that as much as there's uncertainty and difficulty and personal challenges and professional challenges, that there is always something good that comes out of today. So that's one. And then finding your inner circle, your little board of advisors. The two or three people that you can potentially, whether they're professional colleagues or friends or even family, that you can kind of have a sounding board with, and then that's your safe space. So if you can find that safe space for you to just kind of vent, and then take in the perspective and kind of have them reiterate back everything that you just said to them. Sometimes when you hear it back, you're like, why was I so enamored and stressed or angry or frustrated with that topic? Because it doesn't sound nearly as reasonable as it was in my head to be worrying about it so much. That's the other strategy there.
We had another question. Can you clarify if actions is planning to act and strive is acting and doing? Is that how you see those two sections?
So the actions is the actual, so actions has the planning of it and a little bit of the doing. But the way I look at actions, it's a little bit of a build up. So it's a lot of little steps that will get you to the bigger milestone. And when you get to that bigger milestone, it's being able to create the momentum to keep on going. And that's where strive comes into play. Because if you break down your actions sufficiently enough, doing that one little task won't be enough to actually get there. The one little task could be setting up the meeting to talk to somebody for an informational interview. Setting up the meeting is not the action that's going to actually give you the result, but it is something that was in your way that was preventing you from getting to the next step. So this is where it's really keen to be bite-sized here. And the strive is building up enough of those actions so that you actually start hearing milestones that builds up your motivation to keep going and keep repeating the process so that it actually results in whatever your end goal is.
Thank you.
Not a
That's
problem.
all the questions we had at this time.
Great. We'll do one more Menti, and I think this is one of my favorites. Do you use your degree? And it should be a multiple choice. And it can be your undergrad or your master's degree. I didn't specify, so. Wow. All right. So this is rare. When I ask this question, I typically see people say, nope, don't use my degree. I don't know how I'm using my degree. Like, why, like, how do I even use my degree? So I would say this is actually a testament to SILS that enabled us possibly to use some aspects of our degree. And I think there's, we talked about a little bit earlier where I mentioned, communication skills, problem solving skills, a lot of the core fundamentals in library science and information science is developing the strong muscle to be good at those things. So thank you for participating in that. I'll go to the next. And I think using degree, like you didn't come this far to come only this far. And I think this is kind of using your degree sometimes and being creative on how you position your undergraduate or master's degree learnings to help you move professionally. And I think there's a lot of opportunity here to, I would say, tell the story, because sometimes it's not necessarily the degree itself, it's the courses you chose underneath and how you use those courses and how it taught you to think a different way. And a lot of education up to this point has been around formulating a muscle memory to be able to think and process information in a certain way. So I'm probably not going to spend too much time on this since we're actually using our degree, but this is something that I had left undergrad with, without the understanding of how am I going to use information science in the workplace. Like tangibly, I knew I could use it in database design and organizational behaviors, but it really didn't necessarily resonate until I started working. So change is progress. And I think this is kind of the last thing I wanted to talk about before we go into questions and answers. But thinking about change as moving forward, it's the metamorphosis process. And we actually just do it. We do it potentially even hundreds and hundreds of times through our lives. Most of the time we don't recognize when we're going through it. But I think in times like this where, there's multiple factors at place, economic factors at play as well, it becomes a lot more obvious to us that maybe there is an impetus for us having to change, or we are changing in the process and we're actually recognizing those changes as they occur. So thinking about small steps, it's small steps forward and back. And, we always don't need to be moving moving forward. But I think if you are not moving forward and you're taking a step back, that's an acceptable correction. And I think you have to give yourself permission to take that step back, whether that's, taking a more junior role. Sometimes that is completely acceptable. And I've done that. I think there's 3 times in my career where I went and actually took a step back in my role. But what it allowed me to do was to actually develop specialty and a specialization in the area and develop muscle mass to actually be able to, move into even bigger and better opportunities in other spaces. The other thing is about reframing. So Jack Canfield has this kind of what he calls success outcomes. So events plus responses equal outcome. And I think it's, focusing on your response to an event has an ultimate contribution in your outcome is what I take away from that. So the events we can't control. They're not in our control. More often than not, it's because something has happened to us and we are reacting to it. So how do we react? Well, typically, our gut reaction is either sadness, anger, if it's a negative event. If it's a positive event, it's typically excitement, happiness. But what does that do with the outcome? So handling how you look at your responses, and this is where pausing becomes really, really important, because you do need to process, if it's a negative event, you need to process the sadness, the anger, the frustration with the situation to be able to reframe it in a opportunity or a more positive execution opportunity to be able to derive your outcome. And then gratitude. So I did, we talked about this a little bit earlier because, Lori asked a great question about, how do you move yourself into the kindness, mindfulness, gratitude journal. These are things that I do. But there's, focusing on the positive that you have and the things that you do have control over, really, really does some strange and amazing reset to your mind, so that when you do start exploring, you're doing it with a different mindset of mind. You're building your brand. You can build your conversation in a different way to allow you to move to your next great thing. So that is all I had as far as my talking time. And I managed to do it in 21 minutes, even with questions. So that's good. Lori, I don't know if you have any more questions for me, or if anyone else has questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you, Anita. I don't see any more in the chat, but I had a few that I'll start in on, and if people type any in the chat, we can certainly pivot to those. One thing that I wanted to ask you about was we talked a lot about putting yourself in the right headspace and figuring out how you can make those bite-sized action steps to the next thing. I've been talking to a lot of current students and recent alumni during COVID about how this could be a really good time to build your network. And some students have said to me, oh, I don't really want to bother anyone right now. Everyone has so much on their plate. And I wanted to get your perspective from that, both in your coaching role and as a alum, in terms of how you would feel if someone approached you for networking during this time without maybe as many job opportunities to apply for.
Yeah. So I would say expectations of what you expect out of networking would be a little bit different in this time period is probably the biggest thing. So I would say typically in the past, if a student reached out to me or even a friend had reached out to me and networked with the intention of potentially getting a job, it was much easier for me to take the conversation from informational to job. Right now, I think that would be the challenge, is that not everyone's in the position. So I think as long as you're really transparent, you're approaching it with curiosity of
Mm-hmm.
saying, I really just want to learn what a day in the life of your job is like. And I really want to learn, how did you go from doing this to now doing this, which on paper seemed different. So framing it out of curiosity, people love talking about themselves. So I think, tapping into that and really using that to your advantage. I don't think it's a wrong time to reach out to people. Um, People are craving one-to-one interaction in a different way right now,
Mm-hmm.
because we don't have it necessarily in person. So talking to somebody new is actually quite exciting. And I even see it in myself that I'm actually networking more with peers and people that are outside of my core day to day, because there's
Mm-hmm.
not necessarily the forum to force me to do that that would have existed if I was going to a conference or to a seminar or things like that. So barring that, business travel is not in my foreseeable future,
Mm-hmm.
nor professional training in person is in my foreseeable future. Those little 15 to 20 minute, even 30-minute conversations actually, fill up the end receiver's cup as much as it probably will fill up yours.
Mm-hmm. Great, thank you. And that was not even rehearsed, but that's exactly what I feel like people should be taking advantage of during this time. How would you, do you have any best practices of how an individual, certainly they can reach out to coaching, I'm available for current SILS connections, but how would they break down these, they've seen their education as positive, they're using it in their workplace. How can they break down those certain strengths to be able to potentially pivot to an opportunity that's on their periph, or to repackage some of those strengths? What are some ways that they can look at that?
So there is the first thing I always tell clients, particularly in my coaching style, but even some of my colleagues, is that, when you're thinking about your next opportunity, you know, how do you even know what to look up for? Because it's probably not going to have the same title you have now. It might not even just be the matter of adding vice president or senior or some other, denomination of moving into leadership in front of it. There is a tool from the Department of Labor called ONET. That's actually one of my favorite things to get people to start exploring in. And I say, look at your job today. What are the things that you really, really love about that job, or a job that you've had in the past? Or what is that skill set that you really want to work to develop? And literally use ONET, search it up in there, and a whole bunch of titles of different jobs will come out there. There's things in there that come up that I'm like, wow, I would have never considered that. And then I think it's just going and kind of exploring and kind of seeing the other related skill sets. And then you start seeing patterns of things that you're like, oh, okay, I can actually use this over here. I didn't think I can. What are the things that that particular job or industry or company values? And, using that to kind of change your resume to be either have more broader appeal or appeal to a new industry if you're planning on moving into another industry.
Thank you. I don't see any more questions in chat, but you, for our audience, you also have the opportunity to unmute yourself if you'd like to, if it's faster for you to ask the question without putting it into chat. Well, we did have a comment that just came across from Erin Carter. She said, so sorry she has to leave. Thanks for sharing all of this, Anita. So she was your world peas one too, just so you know.
Oh, nice.
So I'll wait a little bit to see if anyone wants to speak up directly or write something up in chat. You've given us a lot of good information. Thank you.
No, I'm happy to.
I just wanted to say, Anita, I do use the Grateful Journal. I've been doing it for the last month and it does work. It's amazing. So I second that and I encourage anyone to do it as well. It's really a simple thing, but very powerful.
Thank you, Stacey. I think that's I'm grateful that you're doing that, but I'm glad you chimed up and said that because I will be in the camp where I wasn't a believer in it. But I think the first time, I will say back in 2015, where I voluntarily left a job I loved, because I was like, I don't have the bandwidth to think about what I want to do next because I'm so busy working from 7 a.m. to 11 p.m. I was at an investment bank, so I was working crazy hours. So I left the job I loved, because I was like, I want to, I'll see what else I can do. And I think in that time, I went through a period of mourning. And someone had mentioned a gratitude journal at the moment, and I was like, no, I don't need any of that fluff, is literally the words that came out of my mouth. But I think after like a month and a half in, I was just like, all right, let's try this out. Let's commit to 30 days, try it out, do it once a day and see what happens. And honestly, it's been like a surviving factor that has, I've kept with me through different personal struggles that have happened after that.
I think especially in a time of uncertainty where you're not being able to be in control of what's happening, that's a really nice way to take back some of that control of at least what you're grateful for.
Absolutely. Any other questions?
I don't see any other questions at this time. Are you comfortable if we share your contact information when we send out the recording to people who were here today, if they want to follow up with you?
Yep, I am completely fine with that.
Thank you. Well, I want to thank you, Anita, and I also want to thank the rest of our participants who joined us today. For the audience, please be on the lookout for a SILS evaluation that should go out by the end of the week that we want to get your feedback on, and both how this presentation went and future topics that you'd like to have through the SILS Connection initiative. So, oh, someone just mentioned in the chat, if you're not much of a journaler, you can meditate on gratitude too, which I think goes back to that mindfulness piece that you had there. So great, yeah. Great suggestion, Leah. Thank you.
There's some great mindfulness apps out there. Thrive has one, and there's some really cool YouTube videos. So if you have kids or family that wouldn't normally buy into this, there is a mindfulness meditation for kids, and it's the person that does it on YouTube is actually pretty good at it, that even I got into it. So
good, excellent. Well, thank you again, and we really appreciate your time, Anita, and especially during this 2020, it's great to hear from people who have gone through similar struggles and have succeeded on the other side. So you're giving us a lot of inspiration for the future.
Thank you so much. Good luck, everyone. Take care. Stay safe.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye.